And when I'm sitting down with you now, I'm thinking, I remember the first time I properly met you was at Willow's birthday a few years back. And everyone was wearing, it was Willoween.
Yeah.
So everyone was dressed in costumes and stuff. So I didn't even know it was you. And then you had like the Zorro kind of mask over your eyes. And so it was a big person. I was like, oh, maybe that's Will, maybe that's not. I didn't know. And then you lifted your mask off. And the thing I recognized you about from the moment I met you was just your ability. You have this unique ability to just be really present and kind and deeply there with everyone you meet.
Right. Well, thank you, man.
And I think that for, having met you in public arenas, whether it was the Bad Boys premiere and then in our personal meetings, as you were mentioning, you're just even better.
Well, thank you, man.
And I think that that's so hard to be when you're that good. But I remember that, and that was the hospitality Radhi felt with you, like that ability to care for each person walking in, the family aspect, making us feel welcomed and a part of it. That I just think that in today's world, that human aspect is what we're all missing.
I think that is a part of my DNA. Part of it from difficult aspects of my childhood. I grew up with violence in my home, so I developed, a really acute emotional sense, out of defense. I just needed to make sure that my father was okay. I needed to make sure things were going well. And I just became really hypersensitive to emotional movement in a room as a defense mechanism. And then as I, grew and as I started to develop that, that heightened sense that started out as defense, as I settled down and, came into a deeper understanding of my power and my desires in the world, it was easier to connect to people in a loving way. It transferred easily from a defense mechanism to an ability to love and care for people.
That's amazing, though, that you were able to process it positively.
Yeah.
I feel like we're living at a time, we've talked about this before, that our childhood experiences form our adult desires.
Absolutely.
And I feel like now people are starting to hear that in the conversation where they're like, oh, yeah, because this happened with my parents.
Yeah.
Now I feel like this. How do you think you were able to, because we've talked about this before when you've talked about your mother, your father, what you learned from them. Tell us a bit about what you learned and how you were able to process it positively and engage with it rather than create a negative story from it. Because a lot of people may see violence and react differently.
Yeah. I think there's always an aspect of us that when we feel unloved, in any capacity, in any relationship, when we feel unloved, when we feel mistreated, when we feel somehow disrespected, it's a natural reaction to want revenge. And I think that's what happens with most people, specifically in our most vulnerable stages when we're children, and we haven't done anything to deserve that kind of treatment. It's really hard for the ego to not click into revenge, and once I discovered that mechanism, once I saw that most of us walk around with, that we want revenge against that mistreatment. It's a little piece of that with all of us. So the problem is that when you seek revenge, you destroy yourself, and that's the paradoxical conflict that we all live in. Yeah. Someone has mistreated us. We want revenge, but if we take it, we hurt ourselves more.
It's crazy how it's
right?
designed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is the, as Radhanath Swami referred to, the perplexing situation that we find ourselves in. And the only answer is loving kindness. And most of us don't want to hear that. It's like, I'll take my chances with revenge. I'm going to take my chances with punching this dude in the face or cussing this girl out or whatever it takes. But I can't do loving kindness. Yeah. And for me, I had such a beautiful example of loving kindness in my grandmother when I was growing up. I always knew I wanted to be that. The way that she loved and cared for people. I didn't realize that her giving was connected to her peace. That was something that I got a concept of later. But I always knew that was my example. And I think that's the critical part. We need an example. Somebody has to be an example. Human beings are creatures of example. You got to see it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really where I am in my life right now. I want to show what it looks like to be loving and kind and giving and forgiving. And I just want to model those virtues as best I can.
It's amazing how the thing we think that's going to help us feel better is actually what makes us feel worse.
Yep.
And you hold on to it because somewhere inside of you, you feel you have to be the person to show that person the truth. Like you feel like it's your responsibility.
Yes. You're going to be the hammer of justice.
Yeah, and so you carry that. And it reminds me of, there was this thing that this lesson that we were talking about and sharing in our meetings was this quote by Russell Barkley where he said, people who need the most love ask for it in the most unloving ways.
Absolutely.
And that's what you were saying when you were giving examples of people in our society today who, it sounds crazy, but somehow they are seeking love.
Absolutely.
And when you kind of put that in your head, you're like, oh, like that's just a plea, a begging.
A begging,
a literal, like, it's not even a proposal, it's like a demand of
demand,
love.
Absolutely.
And you were saying that, and I love what you said then. That's why I'm bringing it back to what I was saying earlier. The reason why I was highlighting the personal aspect of you is that I think that the example that you're setting through who you can be is even more than what you've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What you've done is amazing, and there's nothing to be taken away from it. It's phenomenal what you're achieving and what you continue to achieve. But being able to do that with a loving heart, that must be, I mean, how does that feel internally? Does that also feel that way or no? Are you like, no, Jay, the success feels way better than that, Jay. You don't get it.
But you know, we had that conversation, and there was a real period in my life that I had to struggle with. We can win or I can be nice. Pick one, right? And different people pick different things.
Right.
For the type of material world climbing, you know, that I did for a big chunk of my life, it was military minded. You know, we're going to get that flag to the top of that hill, and you are going to help or you're not going to be here, right? So that's one mindset. And then after I got the flag to the hill a couple of times and kept getting the flag to the hill and realized that you don't feel good and you've scorched earth, you know, around you, and you're like, but nobody's really happy, you know. And then I started to have to question that mindset. You know, I had one of the greatest runs in Hollywood history, you know, 8 #1 movies, all over 100 domestic, biggest global movie star, all of that. And my family was miserable, you know. And I had equated winning with happiness, right? It's like, we're winning. What is y'all problem? You know? You know? And the transition from product focus, like military-minded, get to the top of that hill, and then I shifted into a mindset, and it was really my kids who brought me out of that. I shift into discovering, like, well, damn, people really care about how they feel. Right? You know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
as crazy as that sounds,
no,
like,
it's true.
you know, my father wasn't concerned with how I felt. You know, he wasn't concerned with how he felt. He was military-minded. You achieved the mission. And there's two possibilities. When I give you a mission, there's two possibilities. One, you complete the mission, or two, you're dead. Right? You know, and that's what my father was saying. I grew up with that. Oh,